Hi, I'm here. There. Okay. Thank you, Calvin. That was sweet of you to say that. Yeah, my name is Mary Thayer. I am an alcoholic. I'm coming to you tonight from Tampa. It was about 75 here today. This is the way it's supposed to be, Anyway, I guess I was on about a year ago, and these pages, page 86, 87, and 88, is really a foundation on how I got into this program, and they continue to reveal more and more to me as the years go on, and especially since the pandemic. It's been kind of fun to work with these pages more and more every day. Well, every day I do anyways, but I've been playing with them for a while now. As Calvin said, when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I had taken a geographical cure, and I had gone from Massachusetts to Southern California, and spent the last 5 years of my drinking and Valium use there in California. And then I was 12-stepped into the halls. I should have been put right into some type of a detox, but I wasn't. So in those days, they used to say, you sober up on the bricks, and I did, and it was rough. It really was rough. I never stopped shaking until I was about 8 or 9 months sober, I remember. But I used to attend a meeting out there in something called North Hollywood Radford. It was kind of a popular club at that time. There was a woman who ran that club, and her name was Alabama Carruthers, and she came from Texas, and she used to say things, and she had such an impression. But I remember when I was within the first year of my recovery, I remember sitting there, and she said, for you that want to know what to do between meetings, and I really did, because the only place I ever felt safe was when I was in one of the meetings. That was an odd experience for me. I was so scared and so frightened and so beaten from alcohol. I really never spoke until I was about 3 years sober. I would sit in the back rows. I was just frightened. I was just paralyzed with fear. And so I really didn't know what to do, but I knew something was happening. And in this program, there was an energy I felt from the very first meeting I went to. I was fortunate enough the first speaker I ever heard was a woman by the name of Sybil. She was the first woman who got sober that was west of the Mississippi. That was I should tell you, I'm 49 years sober. Maybe that would help to tell you I came in a while ago. Anyway, and that was September of 1973. And she was still alive, and it was a very powerful meeting. I didn't know who she was. I didn't even know what AA was. And I was introduced to her as I was sobbing after she finished talking, and she looked right at me and said, welcome home, honey. And there was something about the depth and weight of that woman's talk that I knew that she could see through all of the damage and all of the horror, and right through that facade that I had, making you think that I was perfectly fine. But she saw the preciousness within all the brokenness that I had gone through. And that was how I got to AA. Now, I didn't know that at that time. I know a lot of people don't feel as though they've gotten home, but my story kind of tells that I'd never really been welcome in any home. And so there was something inside that touched me, and I couldn't explain it. And I truly believe it was this presence that this 11th step talks about. It's a feeling. It took me 20 years in this program to get out of theorizing about God and finally experiencing God. I thought I had to have knowledge all the time, and it was more about a feeling. And it was that same feeling that I got from Sybil. I got it from my original sponsors. They could look right through my false personas that I would present to you people, and they would look into my soul. Now, my soul was sick. I didn't realize, I think every single one of us, and I started to talk about it. I wanted to tell this story, Calvin, and then I'll go into these pages. I didn't finish it, I don't think, the other night, but I wear this little thing. I don't know if you can see it. It's an acorn. And an acorn is a little nut that has a funny little cap on the top of it. And if you snap that cap off of the acorn, it's absolutely perfect. You ever done that? When I was a little kid, I used to always be taking the cap off of an acorn, and the nut is perfect. It's like your soul is perfect. And we're all a bunch of little acorns, nuts that are perfect with this little cap on top of us. And what the cap is all the stuff that has happened to us that we have had to build survival skills to get through. And that's the way I believe this program did for me. And for some reason, on September 13th, 1973, and I was brought to that meeting, and Sybil looked at me and said, "Welcome home, honey." There was a crack that happened on top of that cap, and there was some light that went through all my mind and into my soul. And for the last almost 50 years here coming up, I have been cracking the cap of this acorn so that I could reach the light that is within. And my book told me this, that deep down inside of every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, and that's where it's to be found. And so as these things happen to me, because if you get sober, it's going to get better, then it's going to get worse, then it's going to get better, then it's going to get worse. It doesn't get better, better, okay? Because these false personas need to die. We need to be reborn. We need to get rid of that part of that cap so that we can get some more light in. And so this 11th step, I was sitting in North Hollywood, Radford. I was scared to death, and I heard Alabama Carruthers say, "If you want to know what to do between meetings, go home and read page 86, 87, and 88. And I thought, okay, because I was just too frightened. I didn't know what to do. And so I went home and I read it. And I started with the beginning where it says constructively review your day. And so she said to read this thing. And so I hate to tell you how slow a teacher I am, but every night I would read constructively. And as the years went on, I would hear somebody say, it says to constructively review our day. It doesn't say destructively. To construct is to build up. Now, by the time you get to an 11th step, you usually have some values and principles that you know that are yours. If you've done a fearless moral inventory, not a fearful garbage inventory, but a fearless moral inventory, and you've discovered some of the morals and values that you need to live by. It took me a lot of years to hear what that step said and to do it that way, to find my values and where I was going against them. Once I have a set of values, it's almost like I've been walking over a footbridge without any railings. But once you do these steps, you will start, especially a 4th and 5th step and a 6th and 7th step, you will start to have some railings to hang on to, some values to hang on to, so you don't fall off of that bridge. And as you continue to go through the rest of the stuff with the 8th and 9th step, and especially the 10th step, you finally are going to enter the world of the spirit. Now that means you're not going to ever be alone again. It took me a long time to hear that. I didn't realize that. I read it with theory. I didn't experience the feeling that will happen if you continue to do this program. So anyways, I would read this thing in the morning and the night, and every morning I woke up and I realized I saw the connection. Well, maybe I'll just tell you the story and then I'll go into what I found over the last number of years. When she told me to do that, I did that. I read it every morning and every night. And that's all I did. I read it, closed the book, and then went back to my life. Now, there was some clear-cut direction there. I could hear the first one, which was, basically to ask God to direct my thinking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. And I could remember to do that, and I did it as I said it, and I read it and closed the thing. About 6 months went by, and I was working in California for this company, and my boss did something, and I was really upset with him. And it was in the days when they still had big, enormous Xerox machines that you do copies. Do you remember those things? And so, I mean, it was like I went in the back room and I started just copying whatever it was that he wanted. I'd already get whatever, it doesn't make any difference. And I realized that I was agitated, and this voice inside of me said, when agitated or doubtful, we pause and ask for the right direction or the right action. And I heard this in my mind, and I, inside myself, went, I'm agitated and doubtful. And right at that moment, the phone rang, and I went to pick it up, and my sponsor had called me. Now, she never called. She never really called me at all, because I had to learn how to ask, by the way. That's something she taught me. But anyway, for some reason, she called me. Now, I don't know what she called me for, because out of my mouth came, well, God's acting fast. I'm glad to hear that you called, because I'm agitated enough. And I went right into what it was. And I realized the last part on page 88 was correct. It works, it really does. But I had to do it. And that was the kicker for me, that I realized that for 6 months, I've been reading this thing, but I had never stopped during the day when agitated or doubtful, and said, I need the right action or the right thought. And so that hadn't happened. And so when after that, I remember reading right after that, it said, that we say thy will be done a lot. And then it said that God, what I asked you to put on this thing, that God disciplines us in what he had just outlined. And I sat there because I wasn't raised with a God that disciplined. I wasn't raised with any God. I was raised with money, property, and prestige religion, but not the religion of any church thing. I didn't have that, so I didn't have to unlearn a lot. But when I read that part where it said, I'm undisciplined and God's going to discipline me in the simple way he just outlined. Now, I've been reading this for 6 months, and I said, he just outlined this. How is he disciplining me? And I literally went back and I looked at these pages. At night is the first ask. What he does is he disciplines us to ask first. Now, I do everything backwards. My sponsor told me we alcoholics do everything backwards. He used to demonstrate, he used to say, you ever watch people light a cake for people's sobriety? They always light the candles on the outside before they do the ones in the middle, and they burn the hell. It's backwards. You're supposed to, we just do things backwards. It was like I would go and do something, and if it didn't work, then I'd ask God. But I didn't ask God, before I picked up the drink. I asked him a lot when I was in front of the porcelain throne, vomiting, please God help. I didn't say that before I left to go out to drink. So my life has always been backwards. It's been self-sufficient. It's been that I think I'm all alone and there is no presence that's present that can hear me. And so as the years have been gone on, I realized that there are 8 asks in what we read every day. So I have to be asking God 8 times, what's going on for me? So the one that became very, very clear to me as it went on was this at night, this nightly review. I don't know about you, but throughout the years, I've done it in many, many ways. I did it exactly as it said here. I would write out the questions. I was like as anal as can be. I was going to figure this thing out, as if intellect was going to get me someplace. Not that there is anything wrong with my brains, as it tells, but I haven't asked God about it. It's like I was going to be smarter or something than God. So I would write these things down, and was I kind and loving? And what happened to me is that I had like a dualistic mind when I first got sober. So it was only right, wrong. There was no gray. There was no love involved at all. And so it would be like I'd punish myself. So those lines in there that said, be careful not to go into morbid reflection and so forth. You're going to be no use to anybody. And I realized that was pretty much what would happen to me. When I'd write this stuff up, I would beat myself up. I had a terrible inner judge that was there for years. Now I knew what this book said. I knew very well what this book, I was raised with big book people. I had wonderful foundation of this program. And at 20 years, I still had a lot of fear. Now, I couldn't tell you that because, you know, you have to have a mask when you have so many years, don't you? I mean, we have to have the AA mask going as if we're, I don't know what we are. We're outright mental defectives is what we really are. But, you know, we're going to show everybody we're fine, I guess. And so I had the AA mask and I had time, and you know, I'd been asked to do these conferences and talks and things like that. So you'd think I'd had my stuff together. And there would be times when life had dealt me some, you know, trials and low spots, as it says. It was certain trials and low spots. And I didn't feel necessarily as if I was really a good member or whatever. But I had this kind of comeuppance with myself at around 20 years because externally everything looked all right. And you people would not have known. But have you ever gone to bed at night and as you turn the light out, feel the loneliness? I mean, why should I have that at X amount of years? So I had a pivotal change around 20 years in recovery. And I really looked at what my relationship was with this presence that this book is talking about. And I found my answer, of course, in the Black Lines. And for me, it happened when I was reading Bill's story. And what Bill's story basically said was that he had turned things into his newfound friend. And I can remember reading that and sitting on my couch and pondering, do I think of God as a friend? Now, a friend is an energy when you really look. It might be a person. I happen to have a friend that I've known since I was 6 years old, and I've sponsored the last 44 years, and we now co-sponsor each other. But that woman is a friend. And if I could see her in one of these Hollywood squares, and Missy, if you're on, I'm sorry. I did this one other night and she was on. I didn't even know it. But if I could see her, I would go. I don't have to say anything. I just nod, should nod, and we'd go. And I'd feel the energy of that connection. Now, you think of your best friend. If you don't have a best friend and you have an animal, you think of that animal as it walks in. And immediately there's an energy, isn't there? I don't know if you have a dog. I have 2 cats and I have a stray. I was just still out there looking for more food, she is. I live about 30 feet from Tampa Bay, and anything that goes by here, birds or cats or anything, I'm after. I love animals. So there's an energy that I feel, and I feel a connection, and I feel safe and connected at that moment. Just at that moment, I will feel the safety and the connection. It was like coming on here and realizing that, you know, you people I haven't seen for a while, and seeing you again after speaking. You were like right in the front row the whole time, and you were an easy target to just, you heard me and I could hear that you could hear me, and we were connected at that moment. I never say your name right, Irene or something, but whatever, you know I love you. When I saw you in the thought that you came all the way to hear me, there was a connection that happened, didn't it? And we had a connection for 1 second. There isn't any fear. And I realized there was something going on with this friend thing. And I started to think about how I had done the steps and how fearful I was to do the steps. And yet I was never afraid to tell Missy anything. She's a friend. She's heard, and we've gone through it since we're 6 years old. There isn't a thing that I haven't done that she doesn't know about, or vice versa. And there's no judgment there. There's only compassion and love and forgiveness. And I thought, that's the type of God I need, because I have been a batter, you know, we all have our traumas that we've had, okay? So when you have these traumas, you have to find somebody where you feel safe and connected with. in order to talk to. So of course, God has to be even 100 times more safe and connected than even Missy is. And I have found that to develop for me. And so slowly over the last almost 30 years, I have been trying to have a God of my experience, not my understanding. In fact, to be honest with you, I think it's an unexplainable, sustainable force, but it's unexplainable until you experience. It's an experiential feeling that works, that makes me feel safe and connected. Hence why I do the 10th step. I wait, I do my steps for the effect. The 10th step promise means you're placed in a place of neutrality. Definition out of the book, safe and protected. Safe and protected. I could not do what I do with you people. I'm an introvert. I don't like talking or anything. I don't make any sense, I don't think. But somehow, if I did not believe, and Al-Anon taught me this early on, and what I think second time I ever spoke, I said, I can't do this. I'm too scared. I can't do it. And she said to me, your phone will not ring unless God wants you to talk. And at that moment, I got out of the way. Now, I have no idea why God wants me to talk, but if God wants me to talk, I will talk, because that presence has been present for me where I never knew that I could get through some of the things that I've gone through in the last number of years, all the years I've been sober, let alone what I was doing before I got here. So I know there's a presence. I just know it. Once you're present with a presence and you have that presence and you feel that presence, nobody's going to tell you anything different. Is that right? How many people here have had a spiritual experience? Now, there's no reason, no rationale or logic connected to that, but it is yours. And you try to have somebody talk you out of that, well, you know what they can do. Good for them. I know what's happened. That's yours. You own that. That's available to every single one of us. And this is why I do what I do. So when I constructively review my day now, how I look at this thing is I don't write the questions out anymore. I found out by doing my inventory to find out what my morals were, not my parents or whatever. You can find that out on page 68 if you ask God to remove the fears that have caused you to do the defects in your character. And you ask him what would have you be, you'll come up with a value or a principle or a moral. Those are yours. They could be your parents, but they're yours. If you said, God, if you could take away all my fears of being a mother and so forth, what would you have me be? And you sit with that presence, something will pop into your mind. Okay? That's your value, that's your moral. And if you look at what you don't like about yourself because of being a parent, you'll see you weren't following that moral or value. That's where you went against your own values. So I now have these hand railings that I can walk. And so when I review my day, I look and I say, was I honest today? Was I curious today? That's a big one for me. I don't just take an assumption that I know everything anymore. I try to ask questions. So was I curious today? Was I loving? Was I awake today? One of my ones that I've recently found with an inventory I did when I was in the pandemic, because you know we're powerless over those things. And I went through and I found out that I wasn't surrendered to what is. So one of my values is being surrendered. So that's how I do my nightly review, was I surrendered to them. And if I wasn't, the story will come up. I don't have to look for the story. It'll just play for me, the area. And I'd say, well, what happened? It's always fear. I came from fear. I didn't come from faith. I didn't come from God on that. And so when I realized this, the last sentence in this constructively review a day is my biggest deal. And I don't do this perfectly. In fact, I'll tell you about how I'm working on that. It says that I'm to ask my best friend for forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. That's a question. That isn't for me to sit there and figure it out afterwards. It's for me to go to sleep, because the minute I wake up, I'm going to ask God to direct my thinking. So don't get involved with trying to figure things out. Let this present be present and guide you. You know, there will be a guidance. It takes some time, but there will be a guidance. So I realize this is most of my nights when I go to sleep and I think about my day, I say, please forgive me, God. I was trying to do your job again. I was trying to do your job. And what God's, you know, Don Pritch used to say this, we're here to do God's work, not his job. I thought that was brilliant. And I thought, what does that mean? It took me 5 years to realize it meant when I'm doing God's job, I've got an outcome, an expectation on how it's supposed to turn out. No, I'm just here. All I did is show up. I'm showing up, paying attention. I'm telling you the truth. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I didn't know what it was going to be coming 2 weeks ago. I have no idea. What am I going there in the middle of the deep freeze? It's like I really am grateful for what I received was internal, not external, as much as internal. Your Mother Teresa used to say something. Problem with folks today is that we draw our family circle too small, and we do. And I have a new family after being there in New Jersey, and you can't buy that. You know, nobody gives you that. It's something about a grace that happens when you get in this spiritual flow. So that's what I do. And every morning when I wake up, I do ask God to direct my thinking. I think it's very important to realize that every day I have to say, divorce my thinking from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. Self-pity is first. That means every day, that means I'm going to wake up with those. And all of those things are fear-based, aren't they? So before I even get out of bed, fear, which I fed for so many years, not faith, was self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. Me, the alcoholic opera. That's exactly what was going on for me forever. And I finally looked at that one day. It dawned over, you know, you've got a lot of self-pity. So I don't have any power. Like, power is my dilemma. I can't take it away, but this presence can. So I can ask this presence. And then it tells me I can employ my mental faculties because they're God-given. Once I get rid of Mary Thayer, after a while, if you do this, you'll realize that after you've said that, you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about what your kid might be up to, or you're thinking about maybe the cats need to be fed outside. You still out there? That mother stray is still out there. Well, we'll wait on her. Anyway, there'll be a slow, gradual process of you waking up. That you're not the only thing here. The world is not revolving around your navel. There's other things that are happening out there. So I go on and I would read that, but that part I worked miraculously for 20 or more years. I get up and it was like, before I even got out of bed, there was a voice that was saying, direct your thinking, have it, it would be like constant. So during the pandemic, I want to tell you what's happening over the last 3 to 4 years. What the heck with the rest? Just read it, keep reading it. There's a little voice inside. There is a God inside. And the more you do this, as it says on the last sentence to the agnostics, as you grow closer to God, he'll reveal himself to you. I don't know when that's going to happen, but your heart will be quickened. And I promise you this will work if you continue to do the drill. So just do the drill. And as you do the drill, new twists to this will happen. So during the pandemic, I started to listen to that Insight Timer. You know that? And most of you people know it's an app. I love this technology stuff. I didn't think I'd like Zoom. I had so much contempt prior to investigation. I love Zoom. Same thing with these apps. So here's this little app, and it's called the Insight Timer, and some woman, I can't think of her name. That would be nice if I knew it, right? There's 1,000 of them on there, but this one woman reads our book, page 86, 87, and 80, on Awakening, and she would read it, and I would listen to it every morning, and then I would meditate. I have a quiet meditation afterwards. And one day I was listening to it, and I thought to myself, I don't say thy will be done many times a day. Do you ever get honest with yourself and ask yourself? I mean, I read it. And so if that's not it, then we shut the book and we never say it again, right? So now you have more technology. There's something called a Prayminder, Prayminder. It's another app. It's a free app. And you can write in prayers. You can tell it to say exactly. And you can't set it for a specific time, but for 20 times a day, I have something that comes up that bings me. It bings. And I know when I go, thy will be done. And the more I do that, the humbler I get, because it's very funny to me. I go, you think you're so smart, you can't remember to say thy will be done? No. There was a time when I did meditation, and this is the hardest thing in the world. I want everybody here to do 6 10-second meditations, just 10 seconds, stop, don't do anything. After 10 seconds, blink. The only way I could remember to do that was the stoplights here in Tampa. They're much longer than 10 seconds. But you try to do that. That's the hardest thing in the world, because I'm undisciplined. My mind doesn't stop. I don't know about you, but I'll have great intentions, but that's that. So anyways, so that's kind of the first thing that I realized. So I'd have the Prayminder and I do the thy will be done. So I thought I was so bright. It was wonderful. I was doing such a great job. And so I continued to this on and on. And then I realized, do you know the second thing after you ask for self-pity and stuff has to do with it. If you don't know what your next thing is to do, you need to ask for inspiration, an intuitive thought, and a decision. And I started to ponder that. And I realized I'm retired. I can do anything. I don't know what my next step is to be. I'm kind of a dope. I really don't. I'm weird. So I thought, I really don't. Plus the fact I do get inspiration and intuitive thoughts, but I don't have any power to carry them out. Before, I don't know, when I was young, I thought I didn't have to ask for the power to carry anything out because I had a lot of energy. I'm old now. It's good to get up and get a cup of coffee, So it was really funny for me because I decided, I said, God, I really need a decision done. And I need your power to carry it out. Isn't that what the 11th step says? Ask for his power and the power to carry it out. How many people ask for the power to carry it out? I never did. I remember when I was new, I wanted to stop smoking. I remember Bev said, well, it sounds like you have the willingness. I said, I do. I really want to stop smoking. She said, well, you better ask for the power to carry it out. Now that was like a light bulb going on. I did. And you can receive that power. Don't ask unless you really want them. Let me tell you that, because you'll get the power to carry it out. I had my lungs so bad, the doctor gave me the power. Hey, stop. Anyway, so that became an interesting thing. And so I would sit in the morning and I would ask for inspiration, intuitive thought, the power to carry it out. Bam, all of a sudden I got everything done and didn't have I wasn't exhausted, and everything I had wanted to do, I didn't have to make any list. It was fascinating to me. It still happens. I still love to do that. It's amazing to me. So I'm going to relax and take it easy, and my day unfolds. And then I got to that point. This is the biggest thing. And I heard this woman on this, on this Insight Timer, I guess it's called, say, we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what my next step is to be, that I be given whatever I need to take care of such problems. Now, does that make sense to you? Listen to this. I said, what? I'm sure she read that wrong. What do you mean I'll be given whatever I need to take care of such problems? Once I ask God to show me what my next step is to be, I have to have something to solve the problem? Of course I do, because it isn't going to be what Mary Thier wants to do, isn't it? Because the next line is, especially that I be free from my self-will. I have to have freedom. And then it just clicked for me. It was the funniest thing. I went, oh my God. Huh. Well, I want to know what my next step is to be. And I am given whatever I need for the next problem. As I said a couple of weeks ago, I was up there in New Jersey and I got in the car with the person that brought me to the airport, which was about an hour away. I got in at the hotel. He picked me up and I was in the lobby. I put my phone in my jacket pocket, and cold up there, and jumped into his very nice vehicle. And we were halfway out of the parking lot and we stopped and took off our coats. And when I did, I just opened the door and took my elbow out and stuff and threw the coat in the back, got to the airport and put my coat on. There was no phone. Now, I want you to know, he was just about ready to take off. And I went, Max, he said, yeah. I said, don't go. I don't have a phone. He said, what do you mean you don't have a phone? We tore his truck apart, everything. And it must have fallen out of my pocket when I, opened the door to take my coat off. That was the most fascinating thing in the world. I don't have a phone number. How can I call my daughter, tell her I can't call her in the lot? It was very interesting. And I said, this is really, I wonder what's going to, curious. I was totally curious at what was going to happen at that moment. And I went, I don't know what to do. And Max said, is that an iWatch? I said, yeah. He says, your contacts are in your iWatch. Would you have known that? I mean, I was given what I needed for that problem. And I got a hold of my daughter. And when I got home, the spectrum was open and I have a new phone. So that problem was resolved. I got what I needed to take care of such a problem. And that's just a silly example, but it's a truism. And I didn't have to have some kind of a meltdown and die. And it was fascinating to be 6 hours without a phone in an airport. You had to get a real pass and things like that. It was very exciting. Nobody talks to anybody, by the way. Everybody's got their head in that friggin' phone the whole time, including me. But that day I didn't. So that was kind of interesting. So I think that's a point to just take. I know you probably people think that I'm anal here, but I am now. It's kind of fun. I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, yeah, I think I'll do that. Because I was agitated and doubtful. Now this next thing comes up. When you're agitated and doubtful, you want to pause and ask for the right direction and the right thought. In the last about 4 or 5 months, I've realized that every day I'm doubtful. I remember I was sitting and I was, I'm not necessarily agitated about things, but I am doubtful. And I go, I'm doubtful. If that's so true that I'm doubtful, God, I should be asking you every minute what my next action and thought is. Because I don't know. I just don't know what's going to happen. And I just ask. Do you know how much love and care that is just to ask this? Why I finally realized at night when I said, I'm really sorry, God, I've been doing your job. I never even asked you. Do you know, if we have entered the world of the spirit in the 10th step, it would be like me coming into this room and never saying hello to the people I know, just ignoring you. It's like there's an energy that is present for me due to the fact I've taken enough of my acorn cap off and there's enough light and I can feel that there is a presence that's present for me that will help me through whatever it is. Whatever it is. Now, a lot of you people know that I went to school. Another thing, you do everything backwards. Your kids go and get master's degree and then you go to college. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so I had about 17 years and I asked God, what do I want to do? I had an excellent job with a high school education. I don't even know how I did it, but I was a buyer for major hull equipment for ships in Maine, at the largest, shipyard, largest employer in the state of Maine. I had a great job and stuff, and I hated it. It was killing people, and I just didn't like what I was building. Anyway, I kept praying and praying and praying, and then I heard a woman who I respected a lot, and I used to listen to in California. Her name was Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she was the woman that brought hospice to the United States, and she had a school in New Mexico for hospice and grief counseling to become to work with people that were dying. And I went. This voice said to me, something happened. Can you hear me? Can you people hear me? My screen just went off and came back. Oh, somebody said I have 5 minutes. Oh, good. I'm glad. Okay. So anyway, I studied death and dying and became a hospice social worker and a grief counselor. So I have been with a lot of trials and low spots, and I've been with and the sacred time of being with people in their final act of maturity, as Elizabeth would say, as we pass into the next realm. I'm in the winter of my life. I've had the opportunity of being very sick and dying and coming back. So it's like, I know there is a presence. I know that this means deep to me, how much I want to commune with my Lord. One of the things that we do every year at New Year's is to ask, what's your intentions for the year? And for the last 3 years, I have had only one intention, and they said, put it in one word. And that one word is to be awake. I want to be awake. That's what I want. I want that more than anything. I don't want, it says that we're driven by 100 forms of fear. I'm not afraid of my fears today. The second one I'm afraid of, self-delusion. I want to be awake. I want to be present. I don't want to be asleep. I don't want to avoid whatever God wants me to see for as long as I can see it. And these lines every day, as I listen to them, what I've done this year is that another techie thing, you people are going to think I'm the tech person here, but did you know that your iPhone has a voice memo thing that you can do? I have recorded this in my own voice in the eye, and I go right through it. And I say, God, probably I'm going to be doubtful or agitated today. So I don't want you to remind me to do that. And now that I have company, this week I've had company, people that I have the privilege of sponsoring, and they're with me, and I'll say, you want to do meditation today? And we do meditation. It's wonderful. If they're not around, the cats go with me. And I do meditation. And then the main thing is that by asking for these things, for the thy will be done, I'm not as agitated. All those things happen. I'm more alert. I'm more awake to what is happening for me each moment of the day. At the end of the day, in fact, I don't do well in planning things. I'm really glad that people remind me to do things. I love my life. My life is full. It's so full. My family continues to grow as I continue on this journey with you. I have a better relationship with a presence that's present that I knew was present with all of us. I do believe that I need you all very much, because if I get in a dark place, you hold a candle for me until I can reconnect with that presence. And I believe that's what sponsorship is. Each one of the gals that I sponsor has a beautiful soul. And all I do is hold a candle if they get in a dark spot. And I can give them these black lines and some suggestions, because these are spiritual tools. This is true. This is the best, most moving, brilliant, sacred movement on the face of the earth today. The people that we reach, it's amazing. But it does mean we will go through necessary suffering. And when you're going through that necessary suffering, you got to have some presence present with you. And I pray that I continue to do this, because I love you people. I think I'm done. Am I done? Is that good enough? Thank you, folks.